So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So guys, I want to touch on something. Billy Joe responded to Chris Eubank's comments about betting £10,000 on Canelo fight. And Billy Joe Saunders trolled Eubank saying that Chris Eubank will never fight Canelo Alvarez. He's not good enough to fight Canelo Alvarez. He hasn't got the skills. And he hit back. Listen, I'm not for all the stuff coming out and saying that, you know, I'm betting 10,000 on Canelo to not, like, I don't think it's something you should be saying, really, especially as a fellow Brit. I know they don't get on. And I think that there's certain things that Billy Joe Saunders says about Chris Eubank that I think is unfair, and I think certain things that Eubank said like that, I think you shouldn't be saying I'm on a fellow Brit saying that I'm going to be betting 10,000 against him to get knocked out. I think he should be in full support, because if he beats Canelo, that becomes a massive fight between him and Eubank. However, anyway, moving on in the sense that I think, personally, this is what I think. I would love to see Billy Joe fight Chris Eubank one day. Even if he loses, or even if he wins, I would love to see that rematch, because I think it would be huge. I think it would be a huge fight. I do think that when Billy Joe Saunders says that, you know, Chris Eubank will never become a world champion, and he reiterated in his interview that he did with Behind the Gloves that he'll never become a world champion, I don't agree. I don't agree, because sometimes you're at the right place at the right time. I personally feel that if Chris Eubank had fought Andy Lee, I believe he would have beat him. I believe if Chris Eubank had fought Shifat Asufi, that Billy Joe Saunders fought for the WBO super middleweight title, I believe Chris Eubank would have beat Shifat Asufi. So sometimes it's about being in the right place at the right time. And Chris Eubank, for some reason, I don't know why right now in the middleweight division, it's a very hard division. I think there's a fight there with Murata, which I believe Eubank can win. And I don't know why Eubank's not chasing that one now. He's fighting Marcus Morrison. I personally think if he fights Murata, he beats him. I think Charlo's a dangerous fight. I think Andrade is a fight that he should go nowhere near. And in terms of the other, Golovkin, again, is another tough fight. But that's a fight that maybe you should think about as well. But I do think Chris Eubank can become world champion. I think he against the right opponent, he can win. If he comes up against a slick boxer, then he may struggle. But against the right opponent, he can definitely win. Now, I would love to see Chris Eubank and Billy Joe get it on. I think it would be a huge fight. Even if Billy Joe loses, I don't think hopefully, if Billy Joe was to lose, right, hopefully he doesn't disappear. And, you know, we don't see him again. I hope Billy Joe does fight Eubank again. I think that would be a really big fight. And financially, it'd be a big fight for both of them as well. Because if you lose to Canelo, then obviously there's not really other big fights that are going to make you huge money out there. Now, Billy Joe may look at Eubank as a big money fight, but actually a fight where he feels he can win quite comfortably. Because let's be honest, Eubank does have trouble with styles like Billy Joe that are slick, that move. But then it would be good to see that Eubank's been working with Roy Jones, how Eubank has come on, how Eubank has improved. So it's really intriguing, and I think it'd make for a great fight. Firstly, listen, we don't know what's going to happen in this Billy Joe Canelo fight. If Billy Joe pulls it off, then, you know, he's one of the biggest stars in boxing, you know, if he pulls off this upset against Canelo. But if he was, you know, like most people expect him to lose, then a fight with Eubank, that's what I mean is, I hope Billy Joe just doesn't disappear like a Naz, you know, lose to Barrera then just disappear. I hope Billy Joe Saunders still fights, because he's still fairly young. He's not washed up or anything. And there's still some other big fights out there for him. You know, he's still a name. You know, he would have lost the best in the world, so it would be no shame. You know, and a fight with Eubank here could probably sell out 50,000 people. It probably could sell out a 50,000 seat stadium here in the UK. It could be massive. So I do think that's a fight I would like to see. I think both of them are now matured. Both of them are at world level now. I think it'd be a much better fight. Both of them, I believe, are more confident now. And can you imagine the grudge, the needle, and everything between them, the back and forth? It'd just be a great fight. Now, we didn't get James DeGale Groves again, which I think would have been great, because when they first met, they were domestic level. But then when both guys got to world level, they didn't fight again. And I hope that doesn't happen with Saunders and Eubank, because I both think they could make a huge fight. I both think both of them could make a huge event and a huge fight. And financially, I think, other than both of them fighting Canelo, I think they're the biggest fight for each other financially. Obviously, I don't know what Billy's getting for this fight against Canelo, but maybe he could make even more money fighting Eubank here in the UK. It could be pay-per-view. It could be sell out a huge crowd here. I sell out, a stadium here. So I think it's definitely a fight that I would like to see in the future, irregardless what happens in the Canelo fight with Saunders, whether he wins or loses. It's a fight that I want to see down the road. I think it makes perfect sense for both guys. I think Billy Joe Saunders and Eubank is a fight that I would like to see. Now, there's going to be a lot of Billy Joe Saunders fans that said Billy Joe schools him and he won't land a punch. Fair enough. I'd like to see it, though, and I'm pretty sure you'd like to see it. So I'd love to see that fight again. Because one thing people forget is that fight, I know Billy Joe, people say he wasn't prepared properly, stamina, he didn't really train that hard. Now, we don't know whether he trained that hard or not. Like, I don't know. He says that he wasn't that well prepared for that fight, and that's why he gassed later down the stretch. But I would still like to see how that fight plays out, because going off the first fight, it was a split decision. It was a very close fight. It was by no means a mismatch. A lot of Billy Joe Saunders fans tried to make out that he schooled him. He didn't school him. It was a very close fight. It was like a 6-5 type of fight. Now, would I be picking Eubank to win? No, because I think Saunders' style is wrong. But that's what I would like to see, because I think it would be a massive fight. I think the build-up would be great. It'd be a huge event. And I think both guys would make a lot of money from it, right? It just makes a lot of sense. If Billy Joe Saunders wins against Canelo, then he may not want to entertain it, because why would you want to entertain it? He would go to another level. I think if he was to lose and he wants to carry on fighting, then I think Eubank fight would make a lot of sense. Because obviously the Eubank fight would be a fight where it generated him a lot of money. It'd be a huge event, and it'd get his name back out there. Because like I said, when they first fought, they were both domestic level. They're now both considered world level, right? So it'd be there'd be a lot more interest. I think it also depends on how Billy Joe Saunders looks against Canelo. If he, like I said, wins, then obviously his popularity goes through the roof. If he was to lose, it depends on how he loses. If he loses close, then he's still a guy that is very marketable, because he's given Canelo a good fight. If he was to get blown away, in a couple of rounds or something, then obviously that's definitely going to take your stock's going to take a hit. But I do feel that Billy Joe Saunders, even though I do pick Canelo to win, I think Billy Joe Saunders I think his stock will rise rather than go down. So that's why I think a fight with him and Eubank down the road, right, will be an interesting fight. I like to see it. And I'm pretty sure a lot of British fans would like to see it. I would love to see that rematch, Honestly, I think a lot of people think that Billy Joe Saunders would like school him. But I don't. I would like to see it. I feel like there'll be a lot of... I think Eubank can definitely ask Saunders some questions. Would I be picking Eubank? No, I'd be picking Saunders to win, just because I think his style could cause Eubank a lot of trouble. But going off the first fight, could Eubank get to him later on? Who knows? And that's what makes it intriguing. Eubank isn't a big puncher. However, I still feel that even against Groves, although Groves got injured, he got to Groves later on in that fight, I do think Eubank is very, very fit and he comes on strong. And George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders are known for fading late on in fights. They're known for fading late on in fights. And someone like Eubank, who's fit and stays in the gym, that's a gym rat, not as good as boxer as those guys. However, he can take advantage of that. Carl Froch was a bit like that. He wasn't the most gifted boxer, but he was an absolute machine. And he would take advantage of people that were tiring later on in fights, because Carl Froch used to come on good. And I feel Eubank is not as skilled as Froch, of course, and he's not as good as Froch. However, I feel like Eubank's the same, whereas I think he can come good later on in fights because of his fitness, his stamina, his determination. He's got a good chin as well. He can take shots. I think that's an intriguing fight. Honestly, I'd love to see it. I know Billy Joe dismisses it, However, this is a fight that I would like to see in the future. Whether he wins or loses, I want to see it. I want to see him fight Eubank again. I think the rivalry, I think the back and forth between the two would be great, because we know that both these guys don't really like each other. Let's be honest. Both these guys don't really get on. They both like to troll one another. Both like to put each other down. You know, like Billy Joe saying Eubank will never become a world champion. Eubank saying that I'm putting money on Canelo to stop him. I just think both go back and forth, you know, at each other, even though they're always linked with one another, even though they're not fighting, and at the minute they're not even linked to fight, and Billy Joe's fighting Canelo, but they're always linked with one another. Like, people will always ask Billy Joe about Eubank, and people will always ask Eubank about Billy Joe. There's a great rivalry there. You know, it can definitely be the rematch would be massive. The rematch would be massive. In the UK, I believe that could sell out a stadium, because both guys are world level guys. Both guys are more recognized now. Remember when they fought, they were domestic level. Nobody even knew them. When Billy Joe was fighting Eubank, they weren't even that known. Like, Eubank was known because of his dad, but Billy Joe wasn't even that well known at that time at all. So I do think the rematch now, that especially Billy Joe's been involved in some good big fights, you know, Andy Lee, Lemieux, and now Canelo. Eubank's obviously got a big name anyway. He had a leg up because of his dad. And he's also now beat some guys. He beat Arthur Abraham, beat James DeGale. You know, he's beat some decent fighters. And if he can get a hold of a world title at middleweight, which I believe he can, I think a fight with him and Murata, I believe he can beat Murata. So if he beats Murata, he becomes a legitimate world champion. Then that fight, I do think the fight will be a lot bigger if there's a world championship on the line. So I think if Eubank can get hold of a belt, or if Billy Joe can beat Canelo, right? Because obviously we know that if Billy Joe loses to Canelo, he's going to be beltless. He's not going to be world champion anymore. So I think one of them would need to be a world champion, and that would make for a huge fight. That would definitely make for a huge fight between Saunders and Eubank. So listen, I'd love to see it. I don't know what you guys think. I would love to see it. I do worry about Saunders if he was to lose to Canelo, about his motivation moving forward. But I hope he doesn't. I hope if he was to lose, especially if he puts up a good fight, you know, he doesn't just disappear. Because, you know, he has had motivation issues in the past. And he knows how hard this boxing business is, in the sense that it's hard, man. When you made the kind of money that Saunders would have made after this fight, he may just think, that's it. You know? So, I'd love to see him fight Eubank again down the road. You know, all the trolling and back and forth is all hilarious and funny, but I would love to see him fight Eubank down the road. I'd love it. I'd love to see it. I think it would be a massive fight. It'd be a massive fight, and I think it'd be an entertaining build-up, and I think it'd actually be an entertaining fight. I don't think it'd be as one-sided as what people think. I think people think that Billy would just outbox him. I don't think it'll be that easy as what people make it out, because I do think Eubank is dangerous, especially late on in fights. If he applies pressure to Billy Joe, I think I could trouble him. I think he could. I think it's a good fight. I would pick Billy Joe, but again, I'm not with a huge amount of confidence, because I do think if Eubank, you know, can correct a few mistakes he makes, you know, work on his feet, which are a little bit slow, and he can be outboxed. I do think later in that fight, I do think he could get to Saunders, but Saunders is the master boxer, the better boxer. Could he just outbox Eubank? It's intriguing. I'd love to see that. I think it would be a great fight. What do you guys think? Is it a fight that you would be interested in down the road? Leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.